And welcome to the Center for the Women of New York Career Skills Workshop Series. Today we have Cultural Competence with our amazing Gail Lewis. Thank you, Gail, for being with us today again. In case you're not familiar with the Center for the Women of New York helps women overcome financial violence, social wellness, and legal issues by raising awareness and advocating for full gender equality for women, understanding their needs and connecting them with CWNY services, nonprofit partner organizations, and public resources to aid, uplift, and address their challenges. We have two locations. You can see them here. Both are in Queens. One is in Queensboro Hall, and the other one is in Bayside in Fort Hudson Park. It's a building that you see on your left. Our current services and programs are here on the screen. You can see them. We have an advocate and referral program. So if you don't know if we offer a service or a program, and you just call us and we will guide you in the right direction if we don't offer that. As I mentioned before, we refer to our partner organizations. We offer financial literacy workshop series, a career workshop series, this one that you're attending now. We have two support groups, one for women in crisis and one for caregivers, which is those of us who take care of our aging family members or friends. We have one-on-one preparation assistance in March and April, tax preparation. So if you need your taxes done, we will be helping with that. And that's one-on-one. We have in-person gardening and sustainability workshops, conversational ESL classes. So we just started in person this week, so we're very happy to be offering in person as well as via Zoom. We have a legal support group support team that answers via email to your inquiries. We have yoga classes, self-esteem workshops, and women's issues think tank. You can go to the next one. We welcome you to any of our services. And again, we are starting new programs and services. So stay tuned for the new offerings. Thank you. If you'd like to watch any of our past events, virtual events, you can do so at cwny.org/past-events. Today, we're talking about cultural competence in the workplace. And I would turn it over to Gail Lewis, our amazing presenter for this series. Thank you, Gail, for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Cecilia, and thank you to everyone at the Center for the Women of New York. You guys do such an amazing job with so many, as you just saw on the slide, so many necessary classes and workshops for everyone here in Queens. So thank you for all that you do. So let's get started with today's workshop. Today, our workshop revolves around cultural competence in the workplace, and it's an interactive workshop, so you can put your questions in the chat or use the Q&A function and put your questions there as well. I'm Professor Gail Lewis, and it's my pleasure today to present cultural competence in the workplace. With so many things going on in the world and so many different types of people living in the world, we bring our cultures with us into the workplace every day. Think about it. Right here in Queens, we are one of the most diverse places on the earth. It's said of Queens that if a language exists out there somewhere, that it is spoken in Queens. So when we leave our homes every day to go out into the workplace, we take all of our culture with us. So it's really important now to learn about cultural competence in the workplace. So I always start these programs with a question: who gets hired and who gets ahead? Well, usually the people who get hired are the people with excellent credentials, people who have experience in whatever the capacity is, or who maybe have a particular type of education or training. Additionally, the people who get hired and the people who get ahead are the people who perform on the job. people who bring in revenue, people who excel in performance, and great performance reviews. And lastly, who gets hired and who gets ahead and who stays longest at the job. These are people who get along with others. And that's another reason why today's workshop is so important, because it's important to learn how to get along with people who are unlike yourself. When it comes to the workplace, what do we have agency or control over? Well, most of us don't have control over everything in our careers or our workplaces. Effective cultural competence can help you navigate new or unfamiliar parts of your work life. And cultural competence can also assist you in achieving your professional goals. So it's an important thing to know. So today in our workshop, we're going to cover 3 things. First, we're going to look at exactly what cultural competence is and why it's so important. Second, we're going to explore the barriers to culturally competent communication. And lastly, we'll look at tools that we can all use to become more culturally competent communicators. So let's get started. We'll start with what is cultural competence and why is it so important? Well, briefly put, cultural competence in the workplace is communicating or exchanging information, which is what communication is, communicating between people from diverse cultures to establish understanding and respect. This underlying understanding and underlying respect makes the workplace just flow so much easier, and it makes doing the work at your workplace easier as well. Why is it so important? Well, according to the Harvard Business Review, or as they call it, HBR, cultural competence is essential for a productive and harmonious work environment. Think about it. Would you want to be a patient in a hospital where the nurses did not get along with each other? I don't think I would want to be there. So you want to have a productive and harmonious work environment because it facilitates the work. Additionally, HBR says that nearly 95% of directors agree that diversity in the workplace brings new perspectives in the door. Additionally, 84% of directors and those in charge believe that diversity in the workplace enhances performance. So, cultural competence in the workplace is very important. Why else is it important? For a few other reasons. First, cultural competence leads to an increased appreciation for other people's perspectives. Understanding other people's experiences can increase your performance as a worker by enhancing collaboration and unity. Think about being on a work group with other people and being able to collaborate with them, sharing your experiences. Also, cultural competence encourages more varied ideas. When everyone is the same, the ideas generally tend to be the same. Having a variety of ideas can help work groups solve problems and find resolutions in more creative ways with new perspectives and new strategies. Think about it. If you own a small business, or if you hope to open your own small business, encouraging cultural competence can help you authentically connect with more potential customers. I mean, bottom line, it equals more customers, more revenue, happier business owner. So cultural competence can affect your bottom line. Additionally, cultural competence leads to improved listening skills. Now, at the beginning of our workshop today, Cecilia mentioned that you can go to the Center for Women of New York website and click on past events. And there, what you'll see is an entire hour dedicated just to listening, because listening in the workplace is that important. In fact, of all of the communication behaviors that we engage in daily, and there are a lot, listening is the behavior that we engage in most. We spend more time listening than anything else. So, cultural competence leads to improved listening skills. It leads to an improvement in something you do the most. Cultural competence can train employees to be better listeners and thus better communicators. So it affects your bottom line, it affects your work groups and the flow of work, and it affects how well your employees work with each other. Think about it. Cultural competence is a win-win. Also, as a small business owner, cultural competence is important to reaching out to your customers and for discovering new customers as well. So let's look now at some of the barriers to culturally competent communication. In a perfect world, we all want to be good, culturally competent communicators. But unfortunately, sometimes things get in the way. So knowing what those barriers are and how to overcome them is really important. There are some common obstacles that you might encounter in the workplace. The first obstacle to culturally competent communication is nonverbal communication. Some nonverbal gestures can mean different things in different cultures. So you want to take time to understand the differences. Some cultures, upon meeting people in the workplace, shake hands. Other cultures don't shake hands and kind of shy away from touch. Other cultures bow or do hand gestures. So learn the differences and understand those differences as well. Some cultures, like us in America, smile at everything. We smile when we're happy. We smile when we see something funny. We are a very, in general, smiley culture. Other cultures, however, not so much. In some cultures, they reserve smiles for things that truly bring them joy. So could you imagine in the workplace, if you are from a culture that just smiles at anything that makes you happy or that you find funny, and you're together with someone who reserves smiling for things that truly bring them joy, like maybe interacting with their children? Could you imagine these two people in the workplace together? One might think, he's such a grouch. Another one might think, oh my goodness, she's such an airhead and so flighty or unserious. And you can see from that nonverbal difference that there might be some challenges down the road. So take some time to understand those nonverbal communication challenges or differences. We all know in America what the middle finger means, but in other cultures, it does not mean the same thing. So think about that. In America, we are trained to make eye contact with our superiors and our coworkers. And if we don't, we are often seen as maybe shady or lying. Can you imagine if we were interacting with someone else at work who does not share that same point of view on eye contact? Other cultures reserve eye contact for people of power or for elders. Could you imagine two people of different cultures with different ideas of eye contact sitting together in a work group? Also touch, like I said before, we shake hands in America. Other cultures, no contact with other people. So take time to understand the differences in cultures as far as nonverbal communication. And with all of these differences and similarities, feel free to ask. Open up an open dialogue with your coworkers, and we'll touch on that in just a few moments. Another way that you might encounter some obstacles in the workplace is with formality. In America, we're not really that formal when it comes to business. After you meet someone for the first time, they might just say, "Hey, call me John. Don't use my first and last name." Other cultures, however, are more formal. And even if you insist on someone calling you by the first name, they might still use your title or your first and last name. So just be aware that some cultures are more formal than we are here in the United States. Additionally, there might be language barriers in the workplace. Some workplaces provide interpreters and translators. Think about the court system. If you've ever been to court, you know that there are translators available, interpreters available in almost every language. So you can use an interpreter or a translator like Google Translate, or you can also learn key phrases yourself. Do some Duolingo or some other free language program. Just learn some key phrases. Hello, how are you? Nice to meet you. This is a great show of respect to people who speak other languages. Lastly, another common obstacle that you might encounter communicating cross-culturally in the workplace is different cultures' relationship with time. Here in America, we are very, very keenly aware of time. We even say here in America, time is money, right? We say, don't waste my time, kind of equating time with cash, right? Other cultures, not so much. We might expect that a meeting at work starts at 9 a.m. And so in America, or in American culture, 9 a.m. means at 9 a.m. we are starting. In other cultures with a looser relationship to time, a 9 a.m. meeting might be closer to 9:30 or maybe even 10 o'clock. So you can see again that there might be some challenges being a competent cultural communicator if you don't understand that. These differences in relationships with time can lead to misunderstandings and even frustrations if not properly understood and accommodated. So, for example, if you have a coworker who is always late for a meeting, maybe strike up a conversation about that accommodation to just communicate to each other what a particular start time means in this culture versus maybe the culture they come from. That relationship with time, you can see, might lead to some sort of friction if everyone's not on the same page. So if you see that there are differences in the relationship with time, again, have a conversation. Now that we've looked at some of the obstacles to culturally competent communication, including differences in nonverbals, use of formal language, language barriers, and also different cultures' relationship with time, let's look at some tools that we can each use for becoming a more culturally competent communicator. There are many tools that we can each use to become a more culturally competent communicator. The first one is to avoid assumptions and stereotypes. Assumptions about a person based on their culture can lead to misunderstandings, and it can also lead to offense. So it's essential to approach each interaction with an open mind and without preconceived notions. So you don't want to go into a cross-cultural communication situation with a preconceived notion in your mind, with an assumption or a stereotype. Instead, you want to go into these communication situations with an open mind and without preconceived notions. Additionally, and this is something that we touched on the last slide, you want to be willing to ask questions and clarify any misunderstandings that may arise. Part of communicating as a competent communicator cross-culturally is learning that we all shouldn't assume that we know everything. I know that's a big one, but none of us do know everything. And so the way that we can iron things out and make sure that we are not stepping on anyone's toes and that we are all on the same page is by asking questions. Questions can clarify and make things understood and make the flow of information a lot more seamless. So be willing to ask and answer questions to clarify any misunderstandings. That alone will put you in such a good place to be a more culturally competent communicator. So avoid assumptions and avoid stereotypes. Additionally, to become a more culturally competent communicator, you want to develop cultural awareness. Fortunately for us, we live in New York, and so we have so many ways to develop cultural awareness. Cultural awareness involves learning about the customs, values, beliefs, and communication styles of individuals from different backgrounds. So there's so many ways that you can do that. Like I said, because we live in New York. But also, even if you don't live in New York, if you're watching this from somewhere else, we all have the power of the internet to make us more culturally competent communicators. If you do live here in Queens or nearby to Queens, Queensborough President Donovan Richards' office hosts free celebrations of different cultures almost monthly. He has great celebrations where he brings at the Helen Marshall Cultural Center, which is part of Queensborough Hall, right on Queens Boulevard. And these cultural celebrations are free to the public. So you can go, you can listen to speakers and just immerse yourself in whatever culture they're celebrating that day. They have such interesting speakers, amazing singers, great dancers, such cultural celebrations that even if you are unfamiliar with the customs of a particular culture or unfamiliar with the culture as a whole, you can really go there and immerse yourself and learn more and really enjoy yourself too. And pro tip, sometimes they have really good food there too, but don't hold me to that one. Sometimes they don't have food, but when they do, it's good. So Donovan Richards, our Queensborough president, has these amazing events almost monthly. I would suggest that you just sign up for his free email newsletter, and you could do that at queensbp.org, www.queensbp.org. And that way you can get on their email list, or you can just follow the Queensborough President's Office on any social. That way you can always be apprised and aware of what cultural celebrations they're having in person at Queensborough Hall. But even if you don't live in Queens or you can't go to Queensborough Hall to cultural events, that doesn't mean that you're left out. You can still become a more culturally competent communicator online. You can visit cultural organizations and museums in person or online and learn more about those cultures' norms and values and customs. So, for example, you can visit the Hong Kong Museum, the one in Hong Kong, online at hk.heritage.museum/en. So you can read it in English and experience it in English. You can also visit online the Italian Museum at italianamericanmuseum.org. And if you want to visit them, they are right downtown in Manhattan. You can visit the Hispanic Museum and Library. You can go uptown Manhattan to visit them, or from the comfort of your own home or on your phone, visit hispanicsociety.org. And there are so many other museums, libraries, and organizations and not-for-profits that just celebrate culture. So this is an easy, mostly free tool that we can all avail ourselves of to become more culturally competent communicators, especially if you go to Queensborough Hall and you get to take advantage of what they have there on a night when they've got some good food. But develop cultural awareness. That's a great way to become a more culturally competent communicator and have some fun in the as well. Additionally, at work, another way to become a more culturally competent communicator is to encourage teamwork and encourage collaboration at your workplace. You can minimize cultural conflicts when everyone has a goal that they're working toward to achieve, and when people collaborate in teams. Goals, objectives, or targets are effective ways to guide a team toward completing tasks and overcoming any challenges. Cross-cultural team building is an essential benefit from cultural diversity. So today, we have looked at cultural competence in the workplace. So let's take a moment to review. Successful cultural competence in the workplace can be achieved, and today we explored it by looking at what cultural competence is and why it's so important. Cultural competence is communicating across cultures, and it's so important because it affects us in our work lives, our work team, and our work environments, and it also affects our job's bottom line, or if we're business owners, our own bottom line. Additionally, we explored the barriers to culturally competent communication, things like language barriers and differences in nonverbal communication. Lastly, we looked at some of the tools for becoming more culturally competent communicators, including immersing ourselves in other cultures, mostly for free, and also feeling free to ask questions for clarification. So today we've looked at successful cultural competence in the workplace. I hope that when you are in your workplace, or if you're looking for a job, when you're in your next workplace, that you remember these tools for cultural competence. Remember, we all communicate, but that doesn't mean we communicate well. So one step toward becoming competent communicators cross-culturally is attending this workshop, which you did. So kudos to you, and taking this information with you into the workplace every day and practicing cultural competence. So thank you so much for joining us today at the Center for Women of New York. Our next workshop is Tuesday, December 5th. And of course, keep in touch with me. If you have follow-up questions, you can always email me at glewis@qcc.cuny.edu. I'm a professor at Queensborough. Also, my shameless plug, I am a Toastmaster, and I see that there's a few Toastmasters online today. If you are interested in learning more about good public speaking And if you're interested in learning more about being a good, effective leader, you can find a not-for-profit Toastmasters club in your own neighborhood. Just go to toastmasters.org to find out more information and to find out if there's a club near you. There's clubs in 120 countries all over the world and all over New York City as well. I'm going to check to see if there's any questions. Didn't see any that were open. Does anyone have any questions? You can put them in the chat. Please feel free.
While we're waiting for questions, Gail, one, can I say concern I hear over and over again from interviewers who are of an older generation. They seem to have the same observation of interviewees of a younger generation. And these are 2 points I've heard over and over again. They slouch and they respond non-verbally with shrugging their shoulders. And the interviewers would prefer an interviewee who sits tall and straight and who responds verbally. So have you heard this, and any advice for these differences across the generations?
Yes, thank you so much for Victoria. That's an excellent point. We're talking so much today about cross-cultural communication. So what we think of immediately are different cultures, obviously, but there's also a different type of culture, and those are the cultures of generations. So the baby boomer generation, which fought in World War II, and they're a lot older. And then there's Generation X, Generation Y, Gen Z, the millennials, all of these different generations all have different communication styles. So you can see what happens when maybe a millennial and a baby boomer get together in the workplace. They have different communication styles. So that's what Victoria is talking about right there. Non-verbals, things like sitting up straight, the more traditional things, communication styles like sitting up straight, writing thank you notes, those are things that we attribute to older generations. So your baby boomers, etc. Whereas, Gen Y might not feel the same way, might not put such a priority on nonverbals like sitting up straight. So understanding who is going to be interviewing you is really important. If you know that the new hires are all interviewed by 4 people and they're all a little bit older, you might want to pay attention to the more traditional nonverbals, sitting up straight, keeping your hands folded in front of you, maintaining eye contact. These are the things that older generations would be really looking for.
Thanks, Gail.
You're welcome.
And also proximity. I remember seeing a cartoon once that made light of that cultural difference. And you had the foreign-born business client climbing over the American's desk to get closer to talk to him. So although it's funny, it can be a problem if your coworkers need proximity or prefer, as most Americans do, to have a little more distance. Any comment on that?
Absolutely. Thanks again, Victoria. During the pandemic, you remember we all had to stay 6 feet away from each other, right? We had to maintain a social distance. Believe it or not, social distance is actually a thing. There's an entire field of study called proxemics, and that's how close or how far we stand or sit or are to each other when we are communicating. In general, as American culture, we feel most comfortable when we're about 4 feet away, 4 feet or more away from people in the course of regular business. Other cultures, however, don't share the 4-foot rule, that idea of that social distance, and they want to be a lot closer. There's an intimate distance, which is think about the distance between, for example, a mom and her child, right? they are always close together. That's that intimate distance. And then you move a little bit further from that and further from that and further from that in the course of your business, or being an adult and conducting business. So if you and also it's a challenge not only across cultures, but also, as we talked about before, across age groups. So older people who, for a variety of reasons, can including the fact that that's just the way they've always been communicating their entire lives, and coupled with the fact that they might be a little hard of hearing, tend to get a little closer than younger people who tend to get a little bit further away. So you might have that issue if you are communicating at work with someone who's much older than you, or someone who's a lot younger than you. You might think to yourself, why are they standing so far away? Or in turn, why are they standing so close to me? So just be aware in the workplace that not only cross-culturally are these proxemic rules, or rules of how far you stand from each other, but also generationally. So if it's someone younger, you might just want to take a few inches back. And if it's someone older, you might just want to just move in a few inches as well. And also, as always, there's personal preference too. So a younger person might just be hearing impaired and need to get in a little bit closer. So there's always those things as well. But in general, older, a little closer, younger, a little further, and culture dictates that as well.
Thanks so much, Gail.
You're
There is a
welcome.
question.
Let's see.
What are some of the ways I can show my coworker I appreciate their culture?
Oh, nice. Let's see. What are some of the ways I can show my culture? To be culturally aware, right? So we just learned, if you are trying to be respectful of someone's culture, learn more about their culture so that you can respect their norms and their values. Just showing people, and this cuts across all cultures, that you value them and that you value and respect their culture goes a long way to showing them how much you appreciate their culture and ultimately them. And then there's another question: how should I dress when I go to an interview at a traditional Christian church organization? That's a great question. Whether it be a traditional church organization or a Fortune 500 company, the best way to attack this question is to do some research. Research the people in the organization, research the organizational style, research that corporate culture. One Fortune 500 company might be dressed in business suits every day, head to toe. Another Fortune 500 company, because it has a young CEO, might be sporting kicks every day and jeans. But the only way to find that out is to do your diligence. So follow them on social, stalk their websites, find out about their corporate culture. So whether it be a Christian church or Fortune 500 company, same thing applies. You've got to do your diligence in there. Let's see. We also have the appropriateness of giving Christmas gifts to people of different cultures. You might want to think of it as a holiday gift, because in December especially, there are so many holidays that are wrapped up in different cultures. So instead of giving maybe a Christmas gift, maybe a holiday gift. That way, if someone is celebrating a different holiday around that time, they don't feel slighted, or maybe they don't feel like they weren't included. So that way it's more inclusive of everything that everyone might be celebrating. And then Shauna said, I'm from a different country and I'm not accustomed to the first name basis in the workplace. Absolutely. We talked about that, Shauna. How can I get past that barrier? That's a great question, Shauna. Yeah. Formality is huge, isn't it? Some cultures are just very formal. So if you take a person from that culture and you put them in the middle of America where everyone's calling everybody by their first name, you can imagine the shock, right? when you're used to calling everyone Ms. or first and last name, or maybe by their title, right? Like professor. So it can really be disconcerting. I don't think, Shauna, the best way for you to do is to get past that barrier. I think embrace your barrier. When you call somebody by their title, and they've told you, call me Bob or call me by my first name 100 times, just say out loud exactly what you're thinking. In my culture, that's just what we do, and it's such a challenge for me to not do that. So I just ask that if I call you by your title from now until the day I die, that you that you forgive me, because it's hard for me to unlearn that level of respect that I've always been taught by my grandparents, by my great-grandparents, by my parents. And so I bring that into the workplace with me. It's not that I don't hear you when you say, call me by your first name. It's just hard for me to unlearn, 30 years of learning from the time I was a child. So please forgive me. So don't think of it as a barrier. Think of that as something to celebrate and enjoy. Let's see. Are there other questions? We've got yay, love Toastmasters. We love that. Thanks for your feedback. If there are any other questions, you can feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A. Let's see.
Just want to make a comment on I am also from a different country, and when I came here from Argentina when I was 20, I had no idea how other cultures behaved, and I at first tended to think that it was wrong to do things differently from what I thought I was taught all my life that was right and respectful, and little by little I got used to it and realized there are so many ways of doing things, and it happens with my kids in school and like in different environments. I just find that the best thing to do is just to talk about it, and just what you just said when you answer the last question, it's just like you just make it known. This is how I've learned to do it, and I feel it makes me feel respectful towards you. But with anything that happens, that it's a difference, we celebrate it. But I think talking about it and just making it known and educating other people about your culture, or even asking questions about the other culture, like if we don't understand something, what you said, Gail, earlier about like we cannot assume that we know everything. I think it's like very valuable to be like, may I ask a question? I'm not used to this. Do you mind, explaining or educating me about whatever action or comment or words, anything that we don't understand. I think that that's the safest for any situation, and we can use that template for interactions where we can see that there is a difference and we're not absolutely clear about why why it is that people are acting in a way that we don't understand.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, Cecilia. Anyone who's come from a different culture, the culture shock, especially Americans. And even just to drill down a little bit deeper, the culture of New York versus the culture of maybe the Deep South. That's different cultures right there. We in New York, we talk fast, we walk fast, we eat fast. That's just our cultural pace versus the Deep South, where the pace is slower, the culture is slower. So you don't even have to leave the United States border to speak cross-culturally. We can do that right here, in our own country. So this is, not even just about people from different places overseas or outside of the country, but people, who are native-born Americans as well.
That's a very good point. It was like once I understood the culture here, I made a trip to the South, and it was like a completely different world. So that is very interesting to see the differences. I'm going to share a very quick anecdote. Sorry, my kids are like behind me. When I arrived to New York, I was so used to show respect or like that I appreciated someone just by giving them a hug or a kiss. And my kids once, like, we watched Dora the Explorer, and they were like, "Mom, that's just like you. You're kissing everyone. No one wants to." So from then I started telling people, "I'm sorry, like this is my culture. This is my way of showing." And everyone was like, "Well, we got it at this point after years of you hugging and kissing people, and we actually appreciate it and understand that comes from your heart." And so sometimes we think that it's out of place or something, but people that are culturally competent appreciate the differences. So. But it's also good to clarify and talk about it with people that you don't know.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. We will see you again on Tuesday, December 5th. And I'm going to turn it back over to CWNY. Thank you, Center for the Women of New York, for all that you do and for, putting these on every month and everything else that you do. If you haven't been to yoga, go to yoga. It's fun. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Gail, and thank you, Victoria, for always organizing these series, these workshops. They're very valuable as per the feedback that we get in the chat. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Gail. I know that I already share programs. You're welcome to any programs that we have. If we don't have them, please reach out and either suggest them or we'll send you to another organization. Our programs are possible because of the contributions of members and donors. Feel free to go to the chat. Atlanta's pasting those links in the chat to either become a member or donate to the center. We appreciate any contributions. No contributions are too small or too big. And again, you can find us in our two locations, Queensboro Hall and Bayside. Feel free to take a picture or just look for us online. Our website is CWNY.org, and you can find all our information there. And I think you can follow us on social media as well. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and we have a podcast that we have a little banter, but like we will get back to it soon. Thank you so much, everyone, for having attended. It was great to see you, and we hope that you join us next month or at any of our other programs.